out there that was transgendered that I knew about. There was actually another inmate that's been out there from the era of the Boys of Boise.
Okay.
Who is transgender, and she was part of that Boys of Boise stuff. When all that went down, and she was a victim actually, but so she's been out there for a while. But I think she came in after me.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in '88 originally, and
yeah, we're recording. Yeah, we're fine.
And so it was, when I first got there, it was like an open yard and on the yard, and I dressed feminine, did my hair, and I wore makeup to an extent. They didn't have real makeup. Sometimes we could get it, but you couldn't get real makeup. But I wore I'd make makeup and wear it, and didn't really have any problems with the guards regarding that at that time. And the inmates you didn't have any gang activities, so it was like, nobody ever really bothered us. When I did first get to prison, they sent me to Orfino, and some inmates tried to, or did, sell me for commissary to men for sex. And I had to get in trouble to go to Max just so I could get away from it. And so I ended up in Max when they built it in '89. And then I spent time in Max until '94. And then I went to the yard. I was on the yard, and I was part of the community, the Native American community, and for a long time. And then it was in 2003 when I decided that I was living a lie, and I was angry. I wasn't a happy person, so I decided to just expose the fact that I was transgendered. And so I came out as transgendered, and everything started falling into place after that. And at that time there was a few inmates, Linda Thompson, who severed her genitals first because they refused to give her treatment. She tried to get treatment, and they refused to give her treatment, hormone treatment. So she ended up castrating herself, and they still refused to give her treatment. And the warden at that time, Paskett, said that if he had his way, he'll never recognize transgender as health treatment for transgenders. And so she ended up severing her penis. And that's when it ended up going to court, and she ended up getting treatment and transferred to California, to Vacaville. She was the first one to sever her stuff. And then there was another girl, I believe her name was Jennifer. She done the same thing, severed her genitals because they refused to give her treatment. And while in the meantime, I was on the yard in 2004, and I went to get diagnosed and seen a board at that time. They had created, after the Linda Thompson incident, a board for transgender healthcare treatment. And it was really, really small at the time as far as any kind of treatment. They didn't give me no treatment, but what they wanted to do was they wanted to take me. I was diagnosed by a board. The warden came and seen me, Warden Randy Blades. He came and seen me, and he says, we want to send you over to Max to get to start your treatment. And I asked him what it entailed. He said, well, you'll be locked down in ADSEG for the duration of your rest of your sentence. And so I had to decline at that time because I have issues with being secluded in a place like that. It drives me kind of insane. I don't like to be locked up, especially alone, because I had issues when I was a childhood being locked in the cellar. And so it kind of carried over to my adulthood, is being locked up like that. It was kind of scary to me, and it caused me suicidal attempts. And throughout my life I've had suicidal attempts because of my transgenderism, not understanding it and how society viewed it back then when I was growing up, because I'm from Oklahoma, and to act like that down there, you'd get hurt seriously, because it was back in the 70s and stuff. And so I was confused about that, and it caused me all kinds of problems throughout my life growing up. And that's what ended me in prison, is because I became a person who was sexually abused, and then I started sexually abusing minors. And so I ended up in prison because of that. But then I got help for it through SANE Solutions, and so I'm doing really good now. I've been out for 6 months. But after the Linda Thompson incident, some doors opened up, like I said, and I went to Max. They wanted me to go to Max, but I declined because of the reasons that I didn't want to be locked up. And so, but I couldn't get any treatment at that time. So then they sent me to Oklahoma, to the private prison CCA down there, and I was there for a year. And then I came back, and then when I came back, they sent me to ICC, and where, they knew I was transgender and stuff. They put me in an open dorm, in a sex offender dorm, with a bunch of rapists and stuff, and I ended up becoming sexually assaulted by gang members over there at ICC. And so then I ended up in the behavior health unit. That's how I ended up in the behavior health unit. And when I first got there, I was in ADSEG. I was in ADSEG for a while, and then they gradually let me out. And this was in December of 2010. In March of 2010, I got approved to be able to do the hormones on the yard, but it was a very, very low dose, and which they want to start you out at a low dose anyway, but I remained on that low dose for years. They refused to change them to the proper dosage at the time. So as I went through my deal, they gradually let me out, but I was on unit restriction. I wasn't allowed to leave the unit without staff being escorted. And then they sent another transgender over, individual over, who was there, and so then there was two of us, and I got it through the prison. I mean, in the behavior health unit, they have a lot of clinical staff, and as far as the clinical staff, like Watson, she became a mentor for us. She started a transgender group there for us, and she started it all out so that we could go in and talk about our issues. And so there were some clinical staff there, and Irving is another one of them, he went to college back east and trained in sexuality, so he knew about transgenderism. He was just really excited about being able to help transgenders. But on the other hand, they were wanting to be advocates, but the department tied their hands out of fear of getting fired and stuff if they pushed it too much. So, but anyways, they did as much as they could, and they did advocate for us through the administration, and they started a group for us, a transgender support group called Mood Management.
In the prison.
In the prison, in the behavioral health unit. And so then came more transgenders throughout the years. I was there in the behavioral health unit from 2010 to till 2016 or 15. Yeah, 2015 when I got released from prison in December, with an exception of 11 months when I was in orphanal again. But as far as the, so now there's like 18 transgenders out at the prison, and most of them are housed in the behavioral health unit, which has its pluses and negatives. The pluses is that it's there. There's an officer there in the middle of the unit most all the time, so it's a safe environment. But the negative is some of the treatment from some of the guards. Not all the guards. There are a lot of good guards out there. But there are some, as in, I have to be fair to IDOC too, because there are good people out there and there are bad people. And the bad people tend to make the headaches more. And the other people, they tend to want to learn. And there's actually a corporal out there who's interested in learning about transgender and asked one of the clinical staff for books and stuff to where they could read up on it so that they would understand and be able to deal with. And I think that's awesome that, they want to learn so that they can know how to treat transgenders out there. I had it really, really rough as a transgender individual with the guards, because one, I was the advocate. Two, I wrote lawsuits and I helped change policies, and so in some aspects I was a thorn in their side, and that entailed a lot of retaliation, harassment, and aggravations and stuff, and which led me to suicidal attempts and stuff. I continuously tried to get my hormones up, and they wouldn't up my hormones, and it led me to deep depression, and I attempted to castrate myself and to get treatment, to have sexual reassignment surgery, and but I couldn't get no help there. So, other than the clinical staff doing what they could do, but as far as the administration, they would not allow sexual reassignment surgery at all, and they wouldn't allow them. The thing with the hormones is they have a policy, and their chief psychologist is Dr. Craig, and he is like split between wanting to help us, but doesn't want to lose his job, basically, and at least that's what I think. But he's like writes these policies to where they wouldn't allow us to go over a certain amount of hormones. And that they made that the policy because they didn't want us becoming too feminine, is what their reasoning was for doing it, is that they didn't want us to be too feminine.
What do you mean?
Well, they wanted to treat us because they had to treat us because the court ordered them to treat us.
Okay.
But if they had their way, they wouldn't treat us. So, at least the administration, prison administration, they wouldn't treat us. They would only treat us to a certain extent so that they could satisfy the obligations of the court case that they treat us, which was the Linda Thompson court case. But the treatment was so minimal that it really just aggravated a lot of us because we were just getting enough to really just make our mood a little wobbly, but it didn't really stable us because we didn't get enough to where it would bring our peak up. And you have loss of energy. You have a lot of stuff that hormones can affect, especially we were taking T blockers or spironolactone, which is a testosterone blocker, and it blocks your testosterone. So when mine would get real low by taking that, but I wasn't getting enough hormones. Like now I'm on 5 milligrams as opposed to equivalent to
of estrogen?
Of
not that testosterone bar.
Of estradiol. Estradiol is the brand they use. But and I'm going to 6 milligrams when I see my doctor. But as far as the you have transgenders who are both just as the staff, you have some good, some bad. You have individuals that want to use it to manipulate the system, and which is a bad idea because it shows bad marks on our gender as a whole. They want to be able to. When I was there, I tried to get. They have a unit that has 18 cells in Unit 13 on the yard at ISCI, and I tried to get it approved to where we would have our own tear. That way, we would have our own shower, and our own bathrooms, and we would have cells, but it would be transgender based. And that way we could be ourselves without fear of ridicule or of harassment and stuff like that. But some of the transgenders didn't want it because, quite frankly, they wanted to be able to go out and have sex with and live with their sex partners and stuff, which, which is against the rules. And so basically, those ones didn't want it, so it ended up not getting approved. But but I thought it was a good idea because it would give us a safe environment, and not to say that the yard is unsafe. The yard is actually more safe. I felt more safe on the yard than anywhere else in the Idaho prison system as a transgender, and just because the staff there. A lot of the staff are more prevalent, and not to say that it still doesn't happen, because if you get someone in a cell, like my issue was that I would not be housed with a non-transgendered individual.